the replay.
Sure.
Of course I'm recording it.
Okay. Great. So when I first started looking into the research of it, I wanted to figure out the pathway of activation, right? So I started looking into the essence of, okay, how do we turn on the thermogenic reaction? Because the whole thing about this was it was going to take the brown adipose tissue, turn on the thermogenic reaction, go after the visceral adipose tissue, and start converting that down. At the first time we looked at this, we were actually looking at this in an alcoholic beverage, and there's a lot of research behind why they chose it that way. I won't dive into the depth of that right now. But what they basically did is they took healthy people that worked out and drank on the weekends, and they watched them for 6 weeks. Then they actually said, okay, if we bring this product in, what's it going to do? And what they really noticed is that it stopped the weight gain over the weekend and intensified the workouts, and so more people burned white adipose tissue. Later, they determined it to be the visceral adipose tissue. So when I started looking at that, I said, okay, if this turns that on, how does it do that? So I went back in and looked at the bitter sensors that are on the tongue and in the mouth, down the esophagus, down the trachea, all the way into the alimentary canal, all the way down into the small intestine. And so, all right, if we turn that on, what happens? So when you hit the bitter sensors and you turn on the bitter receptors, it goes up and hits the vagus nerve, right, which then goes down into the pyloric section of the stomach and closes that off, sends a signal over to the cholecystokinin inside the liver, upregulates the pancreatic kinase, goes back up to the mouth, and now it starts turning the pathway on that says we have a potential poison that we have just swallowed. So what we need to do is we need to stop all metabolism, and we need to go in, and instead of decompartmentalizing it, we want to go back into it, and we want to take everything in that stomach and we want to tear it apart looking for the poison. Once it does that, or to do that, excuse me, it has to turn on the thermogenic reaction, which now means it immediately goes into the visceral adipose tissue, converts that over in literally seconds, and turns it into a liquid form to hit the ATP into the mitochondria. So now it can go into full metabolism of all the contents of the stomach, right? So that was a unique aspect of that. So when I started looking at that component, I said, all right, if this is literally going to go in and break down fatty acids, what types of fatty acids are we breaking down? Are we breaking down short chain? We break down medium chain? We break down long chain? We break down essential chains? Which types of fatty acids are being actually metabolized and converted into usable fuel for the looking of the poison? Now, here's where this gets really interesting, because once it goes through that process and it actually initiates a form of gastroparesis, once it does that and it can find no poisonous substance in there, it sends a feedback loop mechanism back up to the vagal nerve again and says, problem resolved, open the gate, let all of this go through. So when I saw that, I said, okay, for immediately what we're going to start seeing is people are going to experience something they probably haven't experienced since their childhood, and that is 100% complete metabolism of the full contents of the stomach. Now, there are 7 different hormones that are regulated between the mouth and the stomach that we get into, things like gastrin, we get into somatostatin inhibitor hormone, we know all these other hormones that actually process the utilization of that. So I said, okay, if we're actually getting more fuel out of the food we're eating, that's going to start reducing down the desire for food, which means now we're going to go back up and hit leptin, and we're going to turn leptin back on, and we're going to shut ghrelin off, which means now we're not going to stuff stuff into the adipocytes. So I processed all that way through, and I said, okay, now we're going to go back into the liver, and we're going to hit cholecystokinin. We're going to go into the PPY and the GPY genome, and we're going to shut down the pancreas because we have full metabolism. We don't need the elastase enzymes to actually come in and start initiating that. I said, all right, if we're going to do that process, what else is going to happen? So I just started going backwards up the system and said, if we can identify the rancid fatty acids or the oxidized LDL, which is the inflammatory issue, if I can destroy that, break that down, tear that apart, what will that do? So then I went into the inflammatory pathways, and I started looking at all of the different diseases that this rancid fat or the oxidized LDL does cause. And one of the first things that we're going to get into is a chylomicron that gets oxidized, and that's the beginning of the foam cells inside the arterioles that then leads to the atherosclerosis and atherosclerotic plaquing. And so therefore, we're going to start affecting the blood circulation. If we can reduce the resistance, specifically in the peripheral, capillary beds, and in the left and right coronary artery, now we're going to change the dynamic of cardiac output. If I can see that start changing, now I'm going to get better flow circulation, which means now I'm going to go back up into the lungs, and we're going to pick up the nitric oxide out of the nitrogen in the air we breathe. We're going to go back up to the brain, and we're going to turn on nitric oxide synthase 1, 2, and 3. We're going to increase breathing. We're going to increase cardiac output. We're going to increase circulation, and then we're going to start fixing the liver, the pancreas, the spleen, and the kidneys. So I looked at all that pathway and said, okay, if that's going to turn on, what else are we going to start doing? So then I went back in and started looking at all the different types of fatty acids we have. So whether we have the VAT, the visceral adipose tissue, the SCAT, subcutaneous adipose tissue, whether we have the BMAT, which is the brain and muscle adipose tissue, or the brain and nerve adipose tissue, even the BMAT that's in the bone adipose tissue, right? So when I looked at all these different kind of fats, I said, if this is going to do what we think it's going to do, it's going to do something that nobody else thinks it does. Right. And so I looked at this from a functional medicine aspect. I said, all right, if I'm going to bring this into my practice and put this on my patients, my clients, how am I going to measure it? Right. So I said, well, I know it's not weight loss because bone, muscle, and water all weigh more than fat, but fat is the largest, what's the word I'm looking for, geography, where it has the largest girth rate. So I said, all right, let me go through and identify all the different hormonal regulated dysfunctions that happen within measurements of the body. So we identified 27 different spots on the body, and we start measuring that first of all. And what I was trying to do in that process, going, okay, is this a neurological condition, right? So I'm having a fatty acid tissue inside the brain that's going to cause brain fog, dyscognitive thinking. We're going to change into whether we have some form of MG, MS condition. Is it going to be peripheral nervous system issues? What's going to be going on there? Versus the endocrine side, specifically, am I talking about in the female 17 master hormones, in the male 12 master hormones, and those store different fats in different parts of the body. So whether it's above the chest, at the chest, below the chest, above the umbilicus, at the umbilicus, below the umbilicus, the hips, the thighs, all the way down, both extremities. We measured all the way to the hands and the feet. And so I said, if I can do two things, if I can find something that I can measure, right? And if I can then do my blood work, do my urine analysis, do my salivary testing, and I can do a stool culture analysis, I can really watch everything this is going to start doing. And then I can come back and repeat it and prove that we're having the results that we wanted. So the other thing I needed to figure out in between all that is, okay, how do I measure this in a patient or client's point of view? What are they actually going to feel? So I designed 40 some different questions that we would go through, questionnaires that we figured out, and we just started going through the process. Now, when I first started this and I brought it into them, I already had a lot of this data on my patients, clients already, right? Because I've already done all these different tests. So I picked the ones as a little selective at the beginning process. I picked the ones that had some of the greatest challenges. And when I went back and looked at their system, I said, this is a pro-inflammatory condition that I have to go after, whether we talk about the COX inhibitors, whether we go to the PPKs, whether we go to these other inflammatory issues. And if I can find that this will reduce that over time, wow, would that be phenomenal? And so that's how we started. Right, we just actually went in, we took ones we already had all this data on, we put them on at 4 to 6 weeks, and then we came back and did all the measurements, we did all the questionnaires, and we redid blood, urine, saliva, stool, whatever it was I was looking at. Now, the only difference that I had on this as an epigeneticist, I already knew those who had a fatty acid denaturase synthase problem genome in their DNA, and so I could go to them almost immediately and say, you have trouble breaking down fat. So every time you eat a fat-fat bond, a fat-protein bond, a sugar-fat bond, you're storing it inappropriately. Right. And so I could actually give them some other nutrition we'd already been doing. So I picked people that I kind of cherry picked them that I had. And I said, all right, what happens when I put them on fix? Right. So I selected a bunch of different people and I did them at different times. I did them at different doses, and I did them like some I didn't have to do it all during the week. Right. I just had them do it over the weekend, look at their dietary lifestyle. And so I just kind of mixed all those things up so I could see what was going on. Real quick, like I realized after about 4 to 6 weeks that I was running into a problem. And part of my problem was some of the people I had no measurable results on. So I went back into the research and I started tearing apart the research again and started analyzing the processes that they went through in this research so I could figure out how the outcome could be predetermined. And if I could predetermine a problem, or a possibility of low resistance or high resistance, I could then adjust the dosing to make sure I knew how this was going to work. Right. And so what I had heard on the original information was one dose would burn up to 400 calories per hour of fat, and maximum amount of that would be anywhere from 8.5 to 9.5 hours. So more than 2 doses a day would be, I mean, no more than 2 doses a day would be the most that you would do. Well, I had different people had different problems. I had high diabetics. I had a lot of people with cholecystitis kinase issues. I had problems with Crohn's disease. I had all kind of different problems with blood thickness, blood viscosity issues, and I have people who have cognitive dysfunction. So I just played around with the doses until we found out what was really working. Okay, so real quick, like after that phase, I went back through it. I found that about 60% of the people who actually had more than 3 inflammatory markers within all my systems, it was gonna take time for them to burn this out, so to speak. All right. And the research actually showed that people that had those higher numbers, it took 8 to 12 weeks before they had a measurable result. And that was either in blood work or the VO2 max. And there's one other thing, in urine, right? Now, the thing that we have to look at on the pulmonary side of this on VO2 max is because when you actually burn white adipose tissue, which no matter where it is, it's coming from, about 80% of the fumes of that burn will have to come out through the lungs, right? So processing through the hepatocytes back inside the liver to come out the hepatic artery, it'll actually come out the lungs. So one of my questions then was, let's identify the breathing capacity, because we do that about 24,000 times a day. And I could actually gauge how much oxygen is coming in versus how much carbon dioxide is coming back out. And the blood work, I could actually go into it and I could measure that in the carbon dioxide. I could actually go in there and look at the osmotic pressures. I could look at the osmolality. I could look and measure these different factors as well as could I in the urine. So I could get a good sense of how their body was actually recovering or responding to the fix. So pretty soon within that probably 8 to 10 weeks, we realized majority of people at 2 doses a day, a minimum of 90 to 120 days, would have some measurable significant result. And so of all the different things that we started identifying, whether it was like energy, whether it was stool elimination, whether it was an increase and then decrease in urinary elimination, whether it was their skin was getting different, their hair was changing. I mean, the list just went on. They were sleeping better. They had less brain fog. I mean, and Victoria's already sent you all that stuff that we were looking at, all those factors. But here's what we started noticing. The longer people were on it, the more their body started to change. And in the process, we call that the remodeling effect of the body. Now, we also know the body has what's called a selective prioritization phase, which means I wanted to do X, Y, Z, and it says, no, I'm going to do 1, 2, 3. So as long as I gave enough of the product to the clients or the patients and kept them on it long enough, they would actually have measurable results. And they would start coming back to me and go, this is better, this is better, this is better. So we set up a criterion of a number scale when we ask the questions, like on your sleep, how is your sleep? Are you having trouble going to sleep? Are you having trouble staying to sleep? If you get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, how many times do you do that? How long are you awake when you do that? How fast do you go back to sleep? Versus then, how are you waking up in the morning? How long before you feel awake in the morning? So those are the type of questions we went through, and I'm glad to send all those questions out if anybody wants them, and you can go that through your clients, your patient base as well. But just kind of summing all this part of the research up and everything that we found is when I went back in, was doing all the study for the white paper before I published that, and I started looking at all the different parameters. We started off with fat loss, right? And on most of these tables, if you will, fat loss is either 3, 4, or 5, right? The primary indication that I think that these bitter acids, and then we studied the bitter acids extensively, the alpha, the beta, the gamma bitter acids versus the phenolinic side of the hops plant, the hops extract, which is a total different pathway. And we started looking at the resonation of frequencies that were still from the phenolinic side that is now in the bitter acid sides. We actually got neuroendocrine changes, we got endocrine changes, we got all kind of hormone dysregulation that started balancing back out. And we just started seeing some pretty almost freakish, miraculous results of some people. So pretty much here's what I would say my research has kind of concluded to. About 20 to 22% of the people get immediate results. About another 15 to 17%, 16% get very minimal results until we get past like 12, weeks, 14 weeks, 16 weeks. So we got about that 60% in the middle that they're going to hit that phase where they're not going to notice massive changes. They'll notice, it's easier to button their clothes. It's easier to, get their belt buckles done. They can bend over and put on their shoes and socks a lot easier. So we'll start seeing muscles change, joint change, all these other factors. Because what are we doing? We're reducing inflammatory reactions in the body. And when we look at inflammation specifically as a primary for almost 300 different diseases in the body, and when you go back to that vagal nerve and you look at all the different corresponding communication that must occur from the brain to the body, and as we all know, the brain is 80% sensory input, only 20% mechanical output. That's where we start seeing all these changes. So 400 plus different people on this product that we're watching and going through this, and the results we're seeing, there's very few. And I want to end with a couple little components on here that's even beyond what we saw at the beginning. When I really start studying the essence of what these bitter acids do, these mature hops bitter acids, which is a very unique strand, and what we have been able, I say we, the company actually figured out how to get that gamma element out. When you get the alpha, the beta, and the gamma element out, you actually have what is called cellular apoptosis, which means now we go into the morphed and the adrenogenic adapted cells that have changed, and we're actually getting the destruction of precancer cells. Now, we have to be careful how we say that, but this is public domain research that is revealing this, that it actually shows it's destroying cancer cells. I'll give you a prime example. One of my docs down in Tulsa, stage 4 liver cancer, just found out diagnosed with it 6 weeks ago, called me up. We're going through this. I got him on the fix immediately. His CEA was at 530, and in less than 2 weeks, it's dropped 50 points. Tell me what else does it that fast, right? No chemo, no radiation, no other dietary changes, nothing. The only thing we did is we gave him 3 to 4 doses of fix per day, right? So I can give you multiple stories about that. I can tell you people that had a stroke 15 years earlier, 6 weeks to be on this product, got up and walked for the first time in 15 years. I mean, stories after stories, PD, Parkinson's. I can tell you parasitical issues. I can tell you my own story here real quick. Like I came down with pneumonia when I was down in Florida last week, and I was taking 8 doses a day for 3 days and wiped out pneumonia. Literally, wow. I did nothing else. Okay. So it works. I'm going to give you that. And I'll just kind of in with what Terry said. We're in probably the largest clinical trial. Obviously, it's anecdotal. But when I have so much research that's backing this up, and I don't mean 5 or 10 researchers, I mean there's hundreds of different researchers when you go back into the fatty acid side and you start looking at that. Now, there's very limited amount on the actual mature hops extract itself, but I think I have 65 or 68 references within that white paper that talk about all that. And what's even interesting is, let me end with this last phase here. When we look at the 5 different stages of obesity, all right, and we look at those who are in stage 4 and 5, the obesity aspect of the adipocytes has literally squashed and eliminated the brown adipose tissue. What we have found in the research, what this bitter acid does, it goes down to the small intestine and it actually stimulates the pleural stem cells, pleural potentiation stem cells to upregulate that. It takes about 45 to 60 days. And then when you continue to take that, it's going to go into the immune-based side or get the immunoglobulins G, P, F, and M, and we're going to upregulate the ability to actually go produce new brown adipocytes. Here's another very unique thing about the mature hops bitter acids that's related to the fixed product, right? And that they actually been going back and doing research on this. And there's a new concept that's been out since 2019 that they first found. It was confirmed in 2022 and 23. And it's what is now called the beiging effect of white adipose tissue, because this bitter acid goes in and actually stimulates the mitochondrial production inside the white adipose tissue, and it turns it into a beige aspect. And the new clinical term of that is called bright fat, B-R-I-G-H-T, bright fat. And so that research is brand new. And the only thing they have found to do that was the bitter acids, right? And so people that are in stage 4 and 5 obesity, which we know that's morbid to severely death due to the obesity phase, it's actually creating new brown adipose tissue. So
Amazing.
the speculative aspect of that, the research is showing that it could take a minimum of 9 months to turn that on, and it'll take up to 18 months to convert that over. So we're talking about someone who's probably in the excess of 80 to 100 pounds overweight in that category. That's a BMI of 40 plus, right? And if we can look at that phase, that this will actually create new brown adipose tissue. And now, when you take the fix, you take the bitter acids, it will not only convert into the white adipose tissue into a Bayesian aspect, but it goes into creating new brown adipose tissue. And we're going to see, after probably, in theory, this isn't concluded yet, the research is still out, but after about 18 months, we're going to see that process literally speed up, right? Now, Terry, I'm not sure how much we want to talk about the Robin aspect, but I want to mention one point here in the electron transport chain, because when that product comes into the market here in the next couple of months, we're going to take the same effect and we're going to speed up that process. Now, don't misunderstand what I'm saying. We're not going to burn more fat. We're going to speed up the process that's going to get into the perpetration stem cells and creating new brown adipose tissue. And when we start looking at all these different factors, where the oxidized LDL, which is the fatty acids, the rancid fatty acids, combined to the free fatty acid electrons of oxygen, and we reduce that phase, this is something that people who are susceptible to that should be, and for sure could be, on for life, and it will slow down that aging process, or let me even say reverse that aging process. And when we get into perpetration stem cell production and we're creating new cells, now we're generating new youthfulness. And if we get into the AMPK genome, right, we start talking about the mitochondrial energy, or what we refer to as youth enzyme, right, or excuse me, youth genome, we're actually going to speed up getting younger. So the more research I do on this, and I've talked with the guys about this, I said, I was pretty impressed at the beginning. 9 months later, I am so much more impressed with the product that we have and the potentiation it has on these bodies of helping people not only reduce fat, right, but reduce inflammation and reduce 200 to 300 different diseases that happen to our human bodies. So with that, Terry, I'm going to turn it back over to you, brother.
Well, that was a mouthful. I feel like I'm back in college, even though I flunked out. So let me do this real quick, because what he just said, there's a whole nother product that we are about to announce that actually works synergistically with this product. We actually have 3 other products that work synergistically with. I won't get into all that this evening, but if any of you are looking at this from a financial standpoint where you might want to create a residual income, I'm just telling you, Fix, what you've seen about Fix, is the building block. But what we have by June is a whole new level of what's going to happen in the body. So before we go there, though, questions, comments, thoughts on what Dr. Ben just shared from anybody?
Yeah, Anthony, Dr. Slinger. So here's what I do. First of all, and I say this in a rude way, please don't take it wrong. We treat sick people, right? Whether we just talk about subluxation complexes, whether we talk about all the inflammatory issues around the joint capsule, whether we talk about hyaluronic acid, there's a lot of phases we can talk about that, all right? So when I first started people off, I just started off with 1 dose. In all my different trials, I picked 10 different selective components of different dosing to try on people. And so hands down, the best one was a minimum of 2 per day. And so what I do is I have people start within the first hour of being awake, right, to give them that first dose, so I can actually control the cortisol, aldosterone issue, which is what most people have, that drain in the mid-afternoon. And so if I can get that 400 calorie burn per hour started within the first hour of being awake, we have a transitional phase that gets them through that, right? Second of all, then 8.5 to 9.5 hours later was the best time to bring in the second dose. But what we really found for most people, so let's just take the 7 o'clock in the morning time, and then it was almost 10 to 12 hours later, we had a better reaction if they took it toward the evening time, right? A couple hours before bedtime. Now, when we started noticing that people would go through this, one of the things we found is it took about 7 to 14 days to hit what I call the flush mechanism, which means you got all the resistance flushed out of the body, and now we go into motility and flotility of the body, or what I call the fluidity of the body. And at that point, everything just started working better. So some of the people that were getting really good sleep, or like some of my guys, my 60, 70-year-olds getting up 3, 4, 5 times a night to go to the bathroom, when we got that flushed out and they started sleeping better, we started noticing a change in them. So when we went back to the endocrine side and we started talking about that circadian rhythm, about 90 months to get into an acclimatory change, or excuse me, into an adaptive change, another 90 months, 90 days, excuse me, 3 months, 90 days, get into the acclimatory change. We were finding about 4 to 5 months, everything started changing. So I took a few select people and I said, look, I want to do this. I want you to take your dose at bedtime. And the reason I chose to do that is, why do we sleep? We sleep to repair. What do we need to sleep and repair? Was we need some form of energy. So when we look at what's called the Firmicutes bacteroidetes ratio, or the adiposity index, every time we eat, we store food to be used while we sleep. So my theory was, if I could actually initiate a 400-calorie burn while we sleep, wouldn't I get them to actually have better repairability, because there's a constant production of fuel for it to use while it's repairing, right? And so when I started noticing that, I had people that were not waking up in the middle of the night, or if they did, they went to the bathroom, they were back asleep within 5 to 10 minutes, versus those who would be up an hour. And so there's a select few people that I look at, if they have both a neuroendocrine and an endocrine imbalance, where their cortisol's off, their melatonin's off, all these other factors off, I switched that to where I'd have them take one dose within an hour of bedtime, right? And that seems to have made a big difference for some people, not all the people. The one other thing I want to add to that is, when we were coming through the winter months, since I did so much research on how to upregulate the immune system, I had a theory that if somebody got a cold or flu or fever or whatever, what would that do? Would, if I gave it to them, could I increase that? And what really triggered my brain is, okay, if I get a common cold, a cough, I get collective atelectasis or something that's going on inside my lungs, wouldn't this help it? And that's exactly what we did. So we actually started giving them a dose an hour, right? And I had to track it. How many doses are you taking before you feel like you won the battle, or the battle's over and you no longer feel sick? And by the time I did all that analysis, it averaged out about 3 doses, right? So I would give them a dose an hour for 3. Just like I told you, I had pneumonia last week, right? I was taking 2 in the morning, and about every 4 hours, I was taking 2 doses. Boom, boom, boom. And I could tell and feel that the cumulative effect of the atelectasis, or the fluid in my lungs, was going down. And by day 3, 97% gone. Okay. And so when I look at that dosing aspect, I have to ask myself this first question: what is the outcome that I'm looking for? Am I just trying to burn fat? Am I trying to reduce inflammation? Am I trying to boost the immune system? What am I actually looking at? So that's how I decide within my patient base, the dosing I want to do. But generally speaking, 1 in the morning within the first hour of being awake, and anywhere from 10 hours later to take the second dose, and everything be fine. One other little thing we found on this as well: if you'll take it after they eat, it seems to do better for appetite suppression, and it seems to do better to break down and metabolize all the food that's in that stomach, and they feel less hungry. Why? Because they have more energy constantly being burned. And why do we eat? We're supposed to eat for energy, right? And so if I could tell the people, change the brain the way you're used to, so everybody goes down, they get their plate of food together, they know how much food it normally takes for them to consume till they feel full. And I asked them to start reducing that or cutting it in half. And it's amazing how much better they felt with half the food and taking 2 doses a day.
Nice. Nice. Dr. Naira, I said you have experience with this already. You've been taking it. You're also a clinician. Can you kind of comment on what your experience has been?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm very happy to actually comment on it. Look, I started taking it on September the 30th. That's when I received my first dose. I got it at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I took one snap, and at 7 o'clock in the evening, I got in my car and I went to pick up my dogs. And my legs were achy because they were always achy. I've had a lot of knee surgeries. And I just took a little break. I took my feet off the pedals and I started to tuck them in under the seat. And they kept going. They kept flexing. My knees have not flexed past 45 degrees in a decade or more, at least a decade. In 6 hours. So they went to 120 degrees at least. I did not attribute that to the fix initially because I just was kind of like, I don't know, that's just weird, whatever that is. Okay. But the next day, same thing. You know, I got into my yoga pants and they bent, and they still bend. So for me, life-changing. For me, as a chiropractor, 25 years, shoulders don't hurt anymore. Magic. I had no intention of selling this. I swear to you. I was like, just like, I can't do that. I've got so much going on in my life. I'm just not interested. But I was taking it in all kinds of things. My bowels were working normally for the first time in my adult life. And my patients are coming in, and this particular couple, they would drive me insane. They were so stressed. They were so unhealthy. They were getting fatter and sicker and more pain and just like he couldn't breathe. And he was on all these medications, you know. And they're sitting in the corner of my office and they're looking all sick and fat. And I was just like, oh man, like, what am I supposed to say? Nothing. Too bad for you. I feel great. So yeah, off we go, right? So I have put over 100 people on this product myself. Now, I don't have that beautiful, crazy, like, wow, what a mind you've got going on there. I'm just not like that. I'm all kind of like heart, you know, oh, that's great, you know. And, but the patients that I put on it, some of them, I have a couple of vaccine injured patients. Now, whatever your stance is on all that, it's documented that somebody's checked the box and said, yes, this is true. And one of my patients has literally gone from having to ring a bell in the night to get someone to take her to the toilet and having constant seizures and constant migraine headaches and transient paralysis and whatever, all of it, you know, to actually being kind of functional. She came kind of dancing in my office the other day. And I've got another one very similar from the malarial stuff for the military. And same sort of story. I mean, they're not all better, but they're, oh my gosh, they're so much happier. And so for me, I mean, I've had tons of personal experiences, but for my patients, very interesting. You know, it's so good to hear you talk about the cumulative effect of it. Because I did do a bit of research on this whole brown fat thing. And I also recognized that the more obese the people are, the less brown fat they have. And so when I'm putting the really obese people on it, nothing is happening. I was like, oh, it's awful. You know, I'm just like, oh, stick with it. Stick with it. Stuff is happening. But people are going off it. And then they're texting me and they're going, oh, actually, we need to go back on this because ABC, whatever it is, to kidney function, liver function, breathing, asthma, weight, sleep, anger, depression, anxiety, whatever. Pick it. So yeah, for me, absolutely, like 100%. It's the most brilliant thing. So I really appreciate the mind of yours that does this work because my mind doesn't do that work. But and interestingly, somebody was talking about kinesiology. One of my close friends is Anne Jensen, who actually got her PhD at Oxford in kinesiology a couple of years back. They made her do it twice because they didn't believe her the first time. So I'm actually going to run this past her too. So thank you.
Cool.
Awesome. Cool. And I see the question here from Dr. Slinger about the 90 days. You know, I'll
answer that, Terry. So generally what I do, Dr. Slinger, is that when I ask a patient going, I ask them to give me a 90 to 120 day commitment, right? And the reason I do that is because I tell them there's majority of 6% may not see what they're going to call results for anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks. And I want them to get past that phase. So just like Dr. Nara was talking about, if they come off of it, they go, oh crap, it was doing something, right? Now, here's the difference. If I have somebody who has a BMI above 40, right, or a hip waist ratio above a 1.0, I'm asking them to give me a minimum of 6 months. right? Because it's going to take that long for me to get the potentiation of stem cells in and start making that happen, right? If they are above a 45 on the BMI or a hip ratio of a 1.5, I'm asking them to give me 12 to 18 months, right? And the reason is because they know that they're unhealthy. And we need time to not only turn the fires off, but reverse the damage the fires did. So I can get it turned back on so the body can start repairing that again. Okay.
There was and I'm not sure which of you, Dr. Slinger or Dr. Felix, it might have been Dr. Lieber, but Victoria was telling me about some of the muscle testing that you guys were doing at the Parker Expo. Can any of you talk to that and what that was that you were seeing there?
Well, if I can step in for just a moment, yes, muscle testing has been a big part of my practice for years. And in that, I've created a technique of my own. I've studied kinesiology. I've studied a couple of other great techniques that have helped me to develop my own technique. And so through this, if I was to just describe my technique briefly, it's a questions and answers technique, getting yes or no responses through a resistance muscle testing. So I use it exclusively and extensively in helping me to create protocols for my patients for their detoxes. And the great thing about the technique is that it tells me a lot about what the body's experiencing, a lot of the subclinical things that I've always made the joke that I should have called my practice the last resort, because I see so many patients that come in to see me that say, I've been everywhere, I've done everything, and I just can't get the results or the answers that I'm looking for. And it's because I have found that most patients, and I think that a lot of you practitioners can agree, a lot of what people are experiencing are subclinical problems, things that are there creating issues, but they're not within the parameters of what the MDs are looking for in order to treat something. And then a lot of times the testing that they're doing for those problems are they're just inaccurate, or they're not bringing up enough results. So anyway, getting away from that and into the testing that I do, it identifies a lot of the things in the body for me that tell me how the body is going to respond to what it needs to do to detox things. And where Fix came in for me is that, well, let me tell a brief story here. Victoria and Tim have been patients of mine for years, and I've known Tim for obviously a long time because of that. I had just seen him 2 months before. He comes into my office, and I've known, knowing Tim, there was a belly on him all these years, and all of a sudden he comes into my office and that belly is completely gone. And I said, okay, bud, what are you doing here? I mean, it's very obvious that you're looking fantastic, but I saw you 2 months ago. So, fill me in. What are you doing? And he goes, I've been wanting to tell you about this, and you noticed it before I was even able to mention anything. So he told me about Fix. And before he even got halfway through it, I said, I want this. I want this in my office. And primarily because as a practitioner and as a functional medicine doctor, I have a lot of patients that come in and say, hey, doc, my friend is on Wegovy or on Ozempic, and they're losing tons of weight. They look great. And I say, well, let's talk about this for a moment. And I explain to them what exactly it is that their friends are taking, what they're doing to their bodies. And then I ask them, do you honestly think they look great, or do you think that they've just lost a lot of weight? And most of the answers are, I am proud of them because they've lost a lot of weight, and I know that's helping their health, but honestly, they don't look that good. And I said, it's just melting everything away, and it's doing it in the wrong way. So, I in layman terms try to explain to them what's going on there, but this is the reason why when Tim told me about Fix, I said, I need this in my office, because anytime that I told a patient not to do Ozempic or Wegovy, and give them good reasons for not doing it, you always get the question back, well, then what do I do, doc? So never having an option, never having an answer. This thing, as soon as he started presenting it to me, I said, stop right there. I need this. How do I get it? And so sure enough, right away I signed up.
Exactly the same.
Yeah. So anyway, the great thing about it is that for me, the muscle testing that I've been able to do on patients has confirmed to me that their bodies test extremely strong for this product. I have not found anybody's body that says that it can't use it. I have discovered situations where some patients do require some help. Their bodies are going to be detoxing some pretty nasty things, and sometimes it does help to do additional things, of course, to help that detox to happen. And I know that MPG is coming out with some wonderful things, not only like what you mentioned to help out with making this product more beneficial and to work better, but also from what I understand, like the fulvic acid and things that can help the body with the process of the detox. So that's what's been amazing to me. But the muscle testing is just off the charts. It's a way that the body lets you know right away, you know, this is good for me. And if you're at all knowledgeable in muscle testing and how it can work, many times there is just no error to it. You know, the body is going to tell you exactly what it can or it can't handle. And I can get information through my testing on, sometimes I can even go to the specificity of how long is it going to take for me to start seeing results? How long is it going to take for me to get to the goal that I'm getting to? And I do the same thing Dr. Bowers does. And I explain everything exactly the way you do, by the way. All that verbiage and stuff. No, I'm kidding. I wish I could. But I want to be able to do that because, you know, to be honest with you, that was one of the things that happened a lot in Vegas to us, is that there are a lot of doctors out there that have this awareness, and they wanted to know from what you're able to explain from that standpoint, how this works, not just for us to say it's a thermogenic response that the body's, you know, able to burn visceral fat with. They wanted to know specifics. And so I need to be able to let all this out of my mouth the way that you're able to. You know, I mean, it's amazing your knowledge on this and the research that you've done on it. And I want to be able to do that as well. But anyway, to finish up here with the muscle testing, I mean, it is just something that you can show a patient how much their body changes. I mean, how much their body appreciates or likes the product when you test it directly on them. And in asking for the same commitment, you know, 3 months to 4 months to at least see what this can do for you. And most patients are going to see something happen in that time, of course. So yeah,
Dr. let me add something to that for you here real quick. Because within our clinic, what we did is we do SRT along with AK or CK or CPK, all the other things. But we can actually take a device and the frequency modulation, we can intensify it 100, 1,000, 1,000,000 times. All right. Wow. So in the process, what we did with this, we actually put it in a tincture bottle and up-regulated it and said, all right, how many doses at that level will we blow through that? Because when you think about the detoxification pathways, why do we get, and I'll just use it in a funny way, foul material that the body can't break down? That's the debridement of the oxidized LDL or the rancid fatty acids. And that's why it piles up and causes a detox phase. So in our experimentation with it, what we did is we up-regulated that through the SRT aspect of the frequency, and we made it 1,000,000 times more potent, not in the bitter acids themselves, but in the frequency and the ability to actually stimulate that reaction. And we could find that in doing that, we would take the very fixed product, upregulate it, and speed that process up to blow that out. And actually now, once we get that flow moving, now everything started working a lot better. So that's interesting how you brought that up. And I forgot to mention that part of it, but just kind of the unique, freakish things that we were experimenting with, trying to see how that happens. And when you do it, oh, by the way, when we intensified the frequency modulation aspect of that, it didn't divert or change it or demute it at all, right? It just made the body accept it that much more faster and drive it deeper. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah. Wow. On a personal note, I just wanted to mention my own success story with this stuff. Because I have a lot of patients also that come into my office and they say, hey, doc, what's this thing underneath my skin here? And so obviously most of the time they're fatty tumors, lipomas. And I had one the size of a peanut in my wrist here for 15 years. 1 month on fix, And it could have been faster than that. To be honest with you, I wasn't paying that much attention. Next thing I know, and I know that it had been less than a month, because I hadn't gotten my next batch yet. I look at my wrist and that thing's gone. It's there for 15
Awesome.
years. How in the world did this thing disappear in such a short period of time? So when I tell patients that stuff and they say to me, "Oh, you mean these things that I've got on me will go away?" I said, absolutely. If they don't belong there, they're going to go away. So
Man.
yeah, really amazing.
Yep.
So, couple of things, you guys, so we got the recording, fortunately, Dr. Felix, so you can go back and listen to all that Ben
Absolutely,
just
I plan on it.
But back to, so I would imagine that many clinicians, chiropractors, are about the health of their patients. Awesome.
Can I mention one more thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
At this conference, we had there was a girl that was walking around. She worked in the convention center there. She wasn't a part of Parker. We were there for the Parker seminar. She wasn't a part of that. She was a part of the convention center, and so she came around, and we talked to her a little bit about Fix. She was interested in it, and she was given a dose. We asked for a dose of it, and we were giving doses to people and whatever they were drinking, and she was given a dose. She comes back like 4 hours later, 5 hours later, or something like that, and she comes up and she says, "Oh my God, your product really works." And I turned around and I looked at her. I said, "What do you mean?" She goes, "I came by and I got a dose earlier. It really works." And I said, "I love the response. I love the enthusiasm, but how do you mean it works? I mean, you only took this a few hours ago." And so I thought that she was very optimistic, and that she was just misreading what was, what this product was and what it would do. But it wasn't that she thought that she had burned visceral fat in that few hours. It was that she said, "I'm always hungry, always. No matter what I do, I'm always hungry. I haven't been hungry since I took that dose. It's amazing." She said, "I can't believe it." So that's another thing that I wanted to mention about this stuff that you might not hear about all that much. So
Yep. Ben, I've muted you just in case, because there was some background noise. So if you're going to unmute. So real quick, gang. I mean, we can cover other things. I got about 10 more minutes. I got another Zoom starting up here, but we did want to get back to the fact that we do have these other products. We've got NZ Fulvic that is out. It goes after the heavy metals detoxification in the body. Takes nutrition into the cellular level. It bypasses the blood-brain barrier in the cell, and so it's a phenomenal product that helps and works synergistically with the Fix, because Fix is, burning up visceral fat, which is releasing toxins and fungus, and it comes by and it's kind of, to me, in my mind, it's like a Pac-Man, but that's just in my mind. Then we've got Emulin that we're rolling out, Emulin 5, which is something that will take 33% of simple carbohydrates out of the body so they don't convert to sugars and get stored as fat. Also, it reduces or eliminates insulin spikes as well. So people that are diabetic, pre-diabetic, phenomenal for them. And then we've got the Robin product that Dr. Ben mentioned that was originally going to be sold as a blend with Fix, with the MHE. And it's not now. They'll be separate, but that product will go after the subcutaneous fat, and it goes after it very quickly. And in 40 minutes, people will feel the effects of it. In an industry like this, and I don't know if any of you have ever had any real experience in this industry, but when you have a product that goes after the jiggly fat, and people feel it in 40 minutes, and oh, by the way, we can actually validate that, you're talking about the holy grail in this industry. So we've got all 4 products that we will have, all exclusively, all by June. And so we've got this amazing situation for anybody who, if you ever wanted to create additional income, you can do that here. And I have videos on how we build and how all the money works and the compensation plan, all that stuff. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that real quick. Dr. Ben, I don't know if you want to touch on Robin for a couple of minutes and what you've seen with that.
Yeah, thanks, Terry. So the biggest thing that I'm concerned when I start looking at that, we start looking at the flavonoids, and we actually start how we convert the ability to get more mitochondria or more energy to flow, and we're going to hit it immediately into the circulatory effect. And that's why within that 30 to 40 minutes, people are going to feel that difference. They're actually going to feel like a flush of energy development flowing through them. Now, what that's going to do is create a greater demand load to burn down that subcutaneous adipose tissue. And the other aspect of that we're going to start looking at is how we're going to start breaking down other inflammatory issues that then affect bone. So between the two of these, you can reduce osteopenia, you can reduce osteoporosis, you can reduce potentiation for Alzheimer's, you can reduce potentiation for type 3 diabetes. So all these different components we're going to see with these products are going to make a dynamic change. And docs, we've never had this before. I've been in practice over 47 years. I've never had these tools. Right. And at the phase where we're at now, look at where this is going to go forward, especially if you go back to that research back in August and you looked at 78.9% of Americans are in one of 4 stages. Back then, they identified 4 stages of obesity. The market's wide open. And for an industry right now with all these, whether it's the Mounjaro, the Wegovy, the Ozempic, the trizipatides, semaglutides. There's over 170 some different drugs that are going to be released between now and 2028. And if you look at that, they're doing all the work for us. And yet we have God's health hack here, something that was made on the 3rd day of creation that has been waiting for such a time as this, that we can literally go in and change people's lives. Yes, it's about money, but more specifically what we're all here for, it's more about changing the life of the people we have the opportunity to serve. And that's what I'm excited about. Because now, just like Dr. Nero said, when you look out there and you see these people, you go, oh my gosh, these people have been sick for how many years? And now you have a product or a tool in this case to actually change their life. And you're not just changing their life, you're changing the reaction of the people they deal with, right? You're changing the generational aspect of this. You're changing communities of people that's here. All of a sudden, you're getting healthier people, and you're the trusted person. You're the trusted resource doctor that they've come to. And when you can dynamically change their lives, talk about loyalty. Wow, they will stick with you and send everybody they know. All right. And that's what excites me. And that's where we currently are right now. And that's what you have, your opportunity. And we've always heard that old saying that says, when opportunity comes knocking, right, are you going to answer the door? Reminds me of the old joke about the guy that's laying on the psychologist's table and he says, opportunity texted me, opportunity faxed me, opportunity called me, but I never answered it because I thought it would come knock on my door. Well, here it is. It's knocking on your door. And here's your opportunity to take opportunity by the hand, and not just for you, but for the people you have been given the ability to serve. And that's a God-given right, and it's a God-given charge for you to go out there and help them change their lives. And again, 47 years in practice, I can count on one hand how many times I've seen something come maybe near this, but nothing's come as close to what this is. So with that, God bless you guys. And Terry, I'm turning it back over to you, sir.
All right. Thank you for being on, Dr. Ben. Appreciate your time this evening. Anybody else, any questions for wrap up?
I had one little question that one of the doctors asked me. He said he noticed that it said fixed pH and it's hops bitter acids. Is there something significant about the pH in fix and how this works better to maybe be absorbed or whatever?
Yeah, so the
Derek?
pH is because we increase the pH with the purified water that we add. The MHE is actually around a 3 pH, but we get it up to about a 7.
And I'm assuming that helps the absorption of the product by putting it into that pH range.
Well, remember, you have to have hydrogen to get all assimilability, right? And when the stomach truly only absorbs hydrogen from water and very refined sugars, by putting the pH within the realm of the body accepts with the hydrogen, it goes in immediately. It gets absorbed and assimilated, in seconds. No matter what drink you put it in, by the way, all right, or even what food you put it on, it happens that fast.
I was going to say the same thing, Victoria.
Love you, TK.
All right.
I just want to thank you guys for putting this together, Terry and Dr. Ben for being on here, and invaluable. I'm speechless.
It's our pleasure.
Yeah, goes beyond, we think what we have is great, but it's even better than that. Amazing.
Yes, ma'am.
Yep. And I'm going to do one thing here because we're a small group, and I want you guys to understand the opportunity that you have right now. Okay? Because you guys that are on here know a lot of other chiropractors who have a lot of clients, and you have a great, great, great reach potential. I'm going to do something real quick, give you an understanding of what we're talking about. This right here is now weekly income. Residual weekly income. Those are big numbers right there. That number right there is today's income. Wow. So I just want to give you an understanding that there is a lot of money here. A lot of money available. We're just getting started. We're 9 months in. We've got 3 other amazing synergistic products coming, and the biggest of them may not even be here yet.
Right.
A lot of lives can get different with this, guys. A lot of lives. So just wanted to drive the point home.
Hey, at 68 years of age myself, I'm looking forward to that.
Come on, baby. Come on. So lots of great things happening. And so I'll get the recording out to you, Victoria. I'm happy if any of you guys have, if you got people, we're going to do Zooms for, presentation Zooms tomorrow. Just so you know, we're doing 7 Zooms. We start at 7 a.m. Pacific time. 7, 9, 11, 1, 3, 5, 7. All day we're doing Zooms, opportunity Zooms. And we'll be positioning the business more tomorrow. We'll be talking about the product, of course, but we're going to be helping people understand they need to make some decisions fast, because we're going to probably have 500 on each of those Zooms. So, so that's tomorrow all day. It's going to actually, there's a different link. Victoria can get that out to you, but you can get people on that. The idea is to invite people to it so they can see exactly what's going on here. So with that, thanks you guys for being on. Appreciate all of you taking the time. Dr. Ben, thank you so much for being on.
Welcome.
And
Glad to do it.
Yeah, man, that's big congratulations on Diamond and Double Diamond here in a minute. So it's great stuff, man. Great stuff.
Thanks, man.
Yeah,
Thanks
thank you all for joining in tonight.
Yeah, thanks for doing
Wonderful.
this.
My pleasure. All right, gang. God bless you guys.
God bless you.
God bless.
Yeah.
Yep, God bless. I know.
Bye-bye.